I've been hearing a lot of comments and watching the buzz that surrounded the recent discussions about that law in Arizona that is supposedly either, depending on who you listen to, it's a freedom of religion law, or it is an discriminatory law. And I've listened to both sides, and other laws have been talked about, and the cultural debate concerning same-sex marriage is raging as much as ever. And I've been interested in the various responses from Christians as well. Predictably, they've fallen along party lines or political leaning lines, with more progressive Christians taking the side of businesses not being able to discriminate against same-sex couples, say like a wedding baker or a photographer. And then other Christians who've been more on the cultural conservative side have taken the stance of, no, that businesses should be free to not participate in things that violate their religious liberties. And both sides have raised good points, I think. And as usual, both sides are largely talking past one another. And I wanted to just point out what I think needs to happen in a cultural debate of this type. When you're discussing, and in this issue it's same-sex marriage, but it could be any practice that for whatever reason one segment of the population finds morally, religiously, or ideologically objectionable. There has to be a balance in the pluralistic society, in the society where people don't agree with one another over foundational religious issues, which is what we have in America. There has to be a balance between protecting the rights of people not to be discriminated against, which is what the civil rights laws and the business laws that provide anti-discrimination, equal housing, those type of things. That has to be balanced with the protection from government coercion of individuals or private business owners to uphold or not participate in things that they find religiously objectionable within a reasonable degree. And that's where it really comes down to where you see the two sides butting heads is, for instance, right now the issue centers around, well, if a same-sex couple in a state where same-sex marriage is allowed, if they go to a wedding photographer, and the photographer is known for shooting weddings, and they ask the photographer to shoot their wedding, and the photographer says, no, I'm sorry, I can't, because I disagree, sorry, we're having a little tripod trouble, because I disagree with the issue of same-sex marriage from a religious perspective or whatever, then is that couple being discriminated against in a sense that overrides the rights of the business owner to be able to practice freely their religion? And that's where we're at. That's the tricky part. People that are critics of it point to Jim Crow laws, where in the South, black people and white people had to use different water fountains, or restaurants or hotels wouldn't serve black people or people of a mixed race or various other races because it was discriminatory, or because they were racist, and the government ruled, the Civil Rights Act ruled that it was discriminatory, which I think everyone would agree that's the case. But there's a difference, and this is what I'd like to propose in this discussion as you're thinking through the issue of the same-sex marriage issue and religious freedom, is in business or in any public arena, there are people who make their living through business in various ways. Some of the ways are through normal business means, selling a product, serving in some capacity, having a restaurant, offering lodging or a place to live. Anything that people do to generate income, there are lots of ways that happens, is my point. But there are some type of businesses that are uniquely or specifically or inherently participatory, communicative, creative or artistic, or in some way involve a speech act or an act of creation that by its very definition enables, supports, or in some other way advances the cause that one is doing business with. So let me give you an example. I'm an artist. To help fund Disciple Dojo, I do art. I do portrait art, private commissions, I do sketch cards. It's someone comes to me as an artist, and I advertise that I'm a portrait artist, if someone comes to me from, say, a Hindu background, and they want me to do a portrait of one of the gods or goddesses in the Hindu pantheon that shows, let's say, Shiva or Brahma or Vishnu or any of the Hindu gods, and they want me to draw or paint a portrait of that god or goddess in a way that implies the universal reign or the universal reality of this god or goddess. As a Christian, as an artist, I have a decision to make. Do I take this commission and produce the art for this client, or do I object on religious grounds, those grounds being that would be me creating something that communicates a message that I fundamentally disagree with, which is the truth of Hinduism in this case. It could be any religion. Whether I agree with their view makes no difference. It's what they are asking me to produce or to participate in through my business where I may have an objection. Let me take it off of Christianity for a minute. Let's say that there's a business owner. Let's say someone owns a restaurant and they are the child of a Holocaust survivor. So they own a deli, say a kosher deli. If someone comes in, skinhead, with a swastika on their shirt, paint it however you want. If they come in, that deli owner should be obligated to serve this person, regardless of this person's views, because even if they're a skinhead, it says, as a t-shirt that says Holocaust rule, or something other repugnant, ridiculous, trying to come up with a scenario here, they still should be served because the deli owner is serving a product, food, that is not inherently communicative, participatory, or in any way enables or promotes a message. They're just serving a product. However, if that same skinhead neo-Nazi goes to this Jewish deli owner and says, we want to hire you to cater a wedding, and it's going to be performed by my friend, who's also a Grand Wizard in the Ku Klux Klan, by the way, and there's going to be a large, prominent anti-Semitic display and swastikas and all this stuff, so we'd like you to prepare a tray of lunch meats, preferably pork, and we'd like you to arrange them in the pattern of a swastika. Any deli owner whose parents were Holocaust survivors in their right mind would refuse to serve at that wedding. They would refuse because now they're no longer just giving food. What they're doing is participating or enabling specifically an event to happen that requires them to directly contribute to the communication of values that they find morally repugnant. This, to me, is a distinction that gets lost in these debates about whether bakers should make cakes for same-sex weddings, whether photographers should have to shoot a same-sex wedding. The issue of whether it's a same-sex wedding or not, to me, should be irrelevant. It should be, does any business have an obligation to serve someone or a group of people that they fundamentally have an ideological difference with? Not they don't like the color of their skin, or they think that their race is inferior, or none of that. But should they have to participate by enabling the communication or the celebration of something that they find objectionable? I think if we were able to figure out as a society or come to an agreement that there are some type of businesses, some type of services that do more than just provide or meet the needs for someone, but that actually contribute to the promotion of something, then we could craft laws as a society where those type of businesses would have the discretion to not offer their services to any function or view or person or event that they have a moral objection with. And people say, I've listened to Christians' arguments on this, and they said, well, the Christian thing to do, Jesus would bake a cake for a gay wedding. Maybe he would. And as a Christian baker, someone should completely have that right to. Maybe they feel like I disagree with same-sex marriage, but I love these people and I want to serve them and I want to communicate to them that I love them regardless of whether I disagree with their lifestyle or not. And so I'm gonna participate in this wedding in this way. I think that's perfectly valid. But at the same time, someone might have a conscientious objection and say, I love this person, or I care about this person, or if they don't know them, I wish them well, but I can't do something that participates in a cultural or religious ceremony, which is what a wedding is, that I have strong ideological differences with at a deeper level. There should be the ability for that person to not be forced to have to do something that's against their conscience. What would Jesus do? Well, we don't always know, but we know what the early Christians did. In order to participate in Christian life in the first century, say in Asia Minor, which is where the book of Revelation was written to the churches there, modern-day Turkey, there were many aspects of cultural, civic, religious, political life that people were expected to do as part of their doing business with the public. In the first century, to be part of certain trade guilds or certain marketplace groups, you had to participate in certain rituals, whether it was offering a pinch of incense on the altar to your patron god or goddess of your guild, whether it's Artemis or Dionysius or Zeus, or whether you had to pay homage to Caesar, whether it could be something that's bowing down simply before a statue or burning some incense and saying a prayer to Caesar or for Caesar. There were certain things that were normal that you were required to do. Well, Christians, we know that in some cases they refused to do those things, and as a result they were ostracized from the business community, from the socioeconomic life of their surrounding culture. And they were called names, they were ridiculed, they were called atheists, I'm sure they were called bigoted, closed-minded. But they, as believers in Jesus, it wasn't an option. They could not participate in these ceremonies, these feasts at temples that would take place. They many times couldn't participate in them because they had strong moral, religious, ideological objections, and they paid the penalty for it. Whether it was ostracization, whether it was sometimes legal punishment, whether it was fines, sometimes it was imprisonment, whatever, they paid the price for it. So there is good reason for Christians to not want to participate in certain ceremonies that we find objectionable. A Christian business owner or a Christian baker rather, should not be required to bake a cake for a Ku Klux Klan rally. If they find that morally objectionable, they should not be required to have to cater a rally that is dedicated towards celebrating or lifting up or condoning something that they find objectionable. Does that mean that if a KKK member says, we're going to have a wedding and we'd like to, buy something from you to serve there, does the Christian have an obligation to sell them, let's say silverware or napkins or something? That's where it can become a little gray area. They may feel, well, I'm not celebrating in any way by providing, napkins, tableware, or even food, even a cake or anything. But once you ask me to participate in a way that communicates something, like making a decorative display, like a wedding cake, making something that says, congratulations, happy cross burning, or whatever, pick your example, that's when you've moved from providing a service to participating in something at a deeper level. And that's something I think that the courts, that we as a society are going to have to recognize and build into our legal system in this pluralist society. We're going to have to figure out a way to do that. It's not easy, it's not neat. Is there black and white? No. Will there be sometimes where courts rule that something is not inherently participatory and the person can't claim a religious exemption? Perhaps. But to me, this seems to be the only way to balance the needs of anti-discrimination laws, which are real, and freedom of religion and freedom of conscience protection, which also should be real. You've got to balance those two things, and I don't know if there's a perfect answer, but I want to suggest to you, whatever side of these issues you're on, that there should be a recognition that some things by their nature will conflict with a business owner's religious objections. And it may be something that somebody completely disagrees with, but their religious convictions should be respected and honored insofar as possible, while at the same time the person's ability in a free society and a pluralistic society to do business in a normal way and to get goods and services that they need should also be protected in general. And when those two are in conflict, that's when it gets kind of messy. But I want to suggest that in the case of the current culture war over same-sex marriage, that's the current form of it, but it does go deeper. How can we work so that we uphold the rights of the most people and infringe upon the rights of the fewest people in a way that makes the most sense? I don't know if there's a perfect answer, like I said, but I just want to share this. I'd like to hear people's feedback. I'd like to move this discussion forward. The discussion in America over same-sex marriage and associating it with the civil rights movement in the 60s. All of these carry a lot of assumptions, and those assumptions should be challenged. We should all be willing to challenge our own assumptions and to look at the other side and see what legitimate concerns they're raising, rather than just immediately saying, oh, they're just out to destroy freedom of religion and take the country down, or, oh, they're just out to be a bigot and they're using religion to excuse their bigotry. You know, those are easy. That's too easy to demonize people like that. There are some people that hold one of those two extremes, but most of the people in this country are trying to figure out, where do I fall somewhere in the middle of that? And if we can have a discussion in that way, I think it'll go a long way, making us all better people, better neighbors, better Christians, better atheists, better members of the LGBT community, better Jews, better Muslims, better Hindus. There's a sense that this would be better for everyone if we can work out what I would suggest a distinction in business between participatory or communicative type services and more value neutral, inherently neutral goods and services in general. So this video is kind of long, kind of rambling, but I'm better writing or teaching a class than doing a monologue while I'm driving. So let me know what you think. And if you're listening, thanks. Take care.